Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and I'll be your guide into the world of mental health, recovery, and spirituality. Tonight I'm joined by our producer, Gabe. Gabe, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to see you again.
Same to you, bro. Same to you.
Yeah. So I was just telling Gabe we're going to have a special caller here in a little bit as well. A friend of mine, his name is Matthew Fernandez. He's based out of Southern California, and he does a lot of work with young athletes. And tonight, Gabe and I are going to be talking a little bit about how sports have helped us manage through tough times and also kind of build fortitude in our mental health over the years. And
Absolutely.
I thought maybe, as we jump in, as always, kind of my fashion is to hear from you first, Gabe, and then we'll just kind of get into it.
Yeah, man. So just for a little backstory, I played football, basketball, and also ran track all 4 years of high school. Didn't end up playing on the college level, but I've been playing sports since I was about 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah.
So a good 10-year span of just constant athletic.
Yeah.
Football was my go-to growing up. Even I love basketball too. It was kind of a toss-up for a while between basketball and football.
What position were you in football?
Football, I played a little bit of everything. So when I got to the high school level, I primarily was a wide receiver and safety. So I kind of interchanged a lot. I moved around a lot. I had some not so great coaches, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
That was just trying to use my size and athleticism in any way that they could, and didn't really get a lot of opportunities to really lock in to one specific position. But I love safety and wide receiver the most in football. And then basketball, I played either the 3 or the 4. So for those that don't know what that is, that's either the shooting small forward or power forward. So I alternated between those two. But yeah, so.
Nice. Yeah, you're a big dude. How tall are you?
I'm technically 6'3".
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect for
6'2" and some change, really, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect for those positions in football for sure, especially if you have mobility and
right, exactly. And I was relatively fast coming up. I don't know how fast I am now,
Sure.
But growing up, I was kind of middle of the pack in terms of speed, so it worked out well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always had a good time playing sports. It was kind of like my escape.
Yeah, I think society, you hear a lot of people, they share like sports is like therapy for them.
Yeah.
And I always joke, it's like therapy is like therapy, but sports are great.
Right.
And
exactly.
But truly, it's a healthy escape.
It is.
Yeah.
It definitely is. I feel like there was a lot of moments in my life that I can point to where like sports was just kind of like a break from reality. Like, especially football. Football is one of those more aggressive sports. So like, depending on what you're feeling that day, you can kind of take it out and leave it all on the football field.
Right.
And so even, to the point of being an escape, like I see music the same way. Because it's just literally a break from reality. Like I can put myself in a totally different world for a second.
Yeah.
So that's always been a blessing.
Yeah, I think sports is a good gap for that, or like a bridge. All of my hobbies outside of my professional pursuit, the confidence I gained on a baseball field allowed me to walk into the rooms of, groups of people where there were, hobbies that I was interested in and feel like, hey, I belong here.
Right.
And I may not know everybody yet, but I will, And I imagine you have a similar experience like that in groups of people because of sports.
Definitely, absolutely. I remember, so I went to 2 different high schools. And so I remember the transition from one school to the next was a little weird for me because I moved there my junior year. Like everybody had kind of settled in to high school at that point. And I'm starting a whole new experience.
Yeah.
And so over that summer, I knew I was going to transfer. And so over that summer, I spent a lot of time like working out up at the school and all of that. And that kind of helped me with the transition, to be totally honest. Like, I made a lot of friends over the summer that it would have taken me half the year to make if I wasn't playing a sport. So it's always been a blessing in that way, too.
Yeah. Yeah, you know Kim, right? The Fingerprints of Grief. So quick shout out. I was just on Kim's show. It's called Fingerprints of Grief. It's on at 5 p.m. Yeah, she's wonderful. And we were talking about sports, and I grew up playing baseball. I played since I was 4, and took it all the way through college. And a lot of what you're touching on of just like the social lubricant of getting to know a lot of people before you're thrown into classrooms. And for me, I was telling Kim I had gotten arrested my senior year for messing around with the wrong crowd, and my buddy from high school, who was the one who called me to hang out with them instead, he actually commented on the video from Kim's. Yeah, he's a wonderful dude. But if it wasn't for baseball and some of those social circles, man, I don't know where I would have ended up.
Yeah, like it's definitely one of those things. It's like I found my people.
Yeah.
Because we were all kind of working towards the same goal on a daily basis. Like even in class, it helped out because we all like kind of holding each other accountable, because I'm like, you got to make the grades to play.
Yeah.
So it was just all of those little things. I think honestly sports got me through school because I wasn't a super studious person.
Yeah.
And the requirement of sports to actually have decent grades was something that kind of kept me going.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and there's a lot to that, just having the accountability. We got a question in the last show from another gentleman who does a show. His name is Mark Henry, right? And he does a show on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. called On the Mark, right? Am I getting that right?
That's right.
Yeah, and great show. Talks about a lot of things, like sports in general. I think mostly football. I think he's a football recruiter, is what I'm hearing and seeing from his show. But he asked a really interesting question, which got Gabe and I thinking about this topic of, how did sports help manage through tough times, and also what's kind of the bridge or the gap between sports and mental health. And my coach in junior college, when I was playing baseball there. I shared this on the show earlier. He said, you change for college. College doesn't change for you. And he meant that in its entirety. College baseball was a whole nother beast. Just the speed of it, the academics of it, when you're on campus, you represent your team. When you're away on, on a whole nother level. I can't really even equate it, but he would drill into us how important it was to make sure we were accountable to our behaviors. We weren't allowed to act out and misbehave when we were on the road. High school is similar in that way too. When you're on the road, you're representing your school.
Definitely.
And there's a lot of ties that because I grew up on a baseball field, I use that. Those lessons with my clients every day about accountability, responsibility, acceptance of the things we can't control. I mean, you played football, man. Like baseball is a lot of uncontrollables, but but when you got someone who's 200 something pounds about to clean your clock, talk about uncontrollable.
And you got to rely on everybody else to do their job. If your outside linebacker doesn't cut the tackle the right way, you can't even blitz as a safety.
Right.
Like you can't come off the corner the way that you need to. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's little details that everybody has to do their part and know their assignment. And I think football honestly taught me a lot about delegation in a lot of ways. Like I took a lot of those things from a lot of those principles of football and like kind of brought them into things that I do outside of like my work or whatever. Within work.
Yeah.
And different businesses I want to attach myself to and all of that. So I think there's a lot of discipline in sports that is created just because you have to be at a certain physical level, you have to be at a certain mental level, you have to have a certain commitment to it, especially in football, because it's such a dangerous game.
Yeah.
And if you're not really committed to it, you can get yourself really hurt.
Right.
And so it's a lot of those layers to it that I really appreciate about my time of playing sports.
Yeah. Well, I like that concept too, and I've always respected this about football. It was never the sport for me, but what I've always respected over the years about football is a dangerous sport the way life is a dangerous game.
Right.
And when you said know your role, it's like when a client comes into therapy and we start, working on little bits and pieces, a big thing I've noticed in my career, and I'm sure any therapist that listens to this could attest to this, is it's a lot of blame. Like this person did this, and how dare them, and I can't believe this happened. And it's always, here's the progression, and you let me know if you've ever heard anything like this. Is why is it happening to me? Then when I start to take accountability and slowly enter that world, it's like, why is this happening? And then eventually it shifts into, it's happening. You know, and sports is a great teacher of that.
It definitely is. It absolutely is. Like, I remember so many times of coaches, like just little messages coaches would say, like over the years. We used to have this thing. It was like, good, better, best. We never let it rest until our good is better and our better is best.
Oh, I like that.
And so that's one of those things that, again, I took into my everyday life. And that was when I was playing Pee-wee football. Like, so the fact that I still remember that from almost 20 years ago is crazy.
Yeah. That's like a Dr. Seuss book.
Right, exactly. But that's one of those things. It's just you're always striving to be a better person, be a better version of yourself in every capacity. And I think, again, sports kind of creates that level of discipline.
Yeah.
So I always strive to be better. So
yeah, you know, I had a coach, and this was his perspective, and then I heard it many years later in recovery circles and in therapy. But you know, society's so used to looking for, you know, the difference between what's good and what's bad, right? What about the difference between what's good and what's better? Right. You know, what's good, but what could be better for me? You know, what's good is, you know, I'm showing up and I'm doing the workouts. What could be better is if I do the workouts and then I go and I study. What could be better is if I'm, you know, doing the workouts and then also icing my shoulder. What could be better is I'm doing the workouts and I'm also eating properly. You know, it's like, instead of like, well, what's good and what's bad, you know, eating Taco Bell is bad. It's like, well, if I focus on that, you know, I'm going to have a harder time not eating Taco Bell.
Right. Exactly. It's, again, I think the biggest thing that I take from sports is the discipline of it all. Like, I've seen myself lose that a little bit as I've gotten older, just because of the fact that, like, I'm not having to get up at 6 a.m. every day and go to work out, and I'm not having to go through a whole school day and then get ready for practice at the end of the day. So it's like that level of discipline at the time was amazing for me. And it, like I said, it got me through school.
Truly.
And so, yeah, I think, so I would suggest anybody find a sport to play.
Yeah, you know, and that's a good call out. And we're gonna have probably multiple callers. I'm not 100% sure. We're definitely gonna have one, and he talks to kids about exactly that, and he talks to the parents about it. Wonderful human. You'll like Matt a lot. But if you're listening to this, you're a parent and you're thinking like, hey, what kind of stuff? I'm not really sure what my kids are into. Just start throwing them into some sports, you know, see what they like. If they're not into physical sports, try tennis even, you know, just get them into some kind of community sport aspect. And I'll tell you, as a clinician as well, a therapist, I've seen very few things early years work better than that to get kids connected.
Exactly. And I've made lifelong friends through playing sports. Like, these are people I didn't know before putting on a helmet and pads. Like, and so I think just when you're operating as a team, you learn how to maneuver in different spaces, how to approach different people with different ideologies and thought processes, and it's a lot of layers to playing sports that I think are crucially important.
Yeah, and you know, I thought Mark's question tonight was really important to bring on too, because Kim made a point as well of like, you know, when I had gotten arrested my senior year of high school, man, the coaches that were recruiting baseball wise for college, they were done with me. And she made a point that like in professional arenas today, it's like people are getting in trouble for all kinds of outlandish stuff left and right, and it's only if it's like, I guess it depends on how political it gets as to whether or not that person will actually get in trouble.
Right.
And, you know, she made a point, and we were able to laugh about it, but I saw a lot of wisdom in it. You know, when we talked about it, she said she was almost angry for me that had happened. And I told her, I said, I see God's hand in my life at that time. Me personally, I needed to get arrested. I needed to have opportunities taken away because I did have the talent to play at the next level. And I was messing it up left and right because I didn't have coaches in high school that could hold me accountable. The law had to do that, you know. But Yeah, I think it's really important because now we're seeing these professional athletes and the lack of accountability on that level, or the ability to buy your way out of things. It's like that doesn't translate into life off the field at all.
Right, exactly. And it's such a difficult thing when you see all of these images of different athletes and entertainers that get in trouble for this very same thing that you did, if not worse. But they're able to bounce back from it. And a lot of times I've seen so many cases where a mistake was made or a wrong decision was made and they're not able to recover. They never get another opportunity. Some of the most talented people I've ever seen play these sports or do music or be in entertainment at all. Yeah. Some of the most talented people never get that shot because when you're trying to enter a space, like you kind of have to be flawless. Yeah, that's the assumption. Yeah, and it's not fair to me.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, right? Because the pendulum swings too aggressively, right? It's in therapy we talk about not operating in extremes, right? All good or all bad, and that's precisely what we see in media. It's like it's the people you're not hearing about that are the concept Kim and I were talking about, like the guys that aren't getting that big time opportunity, but they're getting away with all kinds of shenanigans because the spotlight's not on them. But once it is, if you're not flawless and perfect, which is just an absurd lesson to teach people, right? Because perfection doesn't exist. I mean, you could be the best in the world at a sport, like one of the best athletes to ever live, Michael Jordan, and he's got a gambling problem. Guy's not perfect, you know. And it's an unrealistic standard,
And that's like, I think, granted, you can't let people just go wild. There has to be some checks and balances, but at the same time, I think people need second chances too. Yeah. People need to, it needs to be an understanding that we're all humans and we're gonna make mistakes. Whether it's something legal, whether it's something illegal, whatever that situation may be. People are going to make mistakes. Yeah. Especially young people. Yeah. So you can't hold them to the standard of somebody who is a full-grown adult who's been through it all. Yeah. That's not fair to me.
Truly.
And we got a caller calling in, actually.
All right. That might be Matt. Let's find out. All right. Hello.
This is Matthew Fernandez calling in.
Hey, Matt. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. We're just getting the sound coordinated here. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, cool. So for those listening, our caller, his name is Matthew Fernandez. And, Matt, I'm going to shut up here in a second and let you introduce yourself. But Matt's doing some really cool stuff with young athletes and in his clinical practice as a mental health therapist out in Southern California. And, Matt, you want to share a little bit with us of what you do and just kind of the mindset stuff you're working on and kind of plug some of that and tell us about it?
Yeah, definitely. So, first of all, shout out to Alan and all you're doing out there. And I'm all the way in California, but my specific practice is really just working with individuals specifically about taking this new perspective stance where people are able to just adjust and adapt in different scenarios and situations. And I feel like a lot of times we go in with mindsets for something specific, and the way that I just did a simple word placement was mind stance, in that you can adjust, adapt. And I know athletes, it resonates with them because essentially you can switch up your stance, you can prep, you can pivot, especially in basketball. When you pivot, you're able to move around and adjust without compromising your position and your core beliefs. So it's something I've been able to do recently. I enjoy it. I've been working with a lot of different athletes, specifically in high school aged settings, and a lot of D1 athletes, football, baseball, basketball. Got to go and speak to a couple of guys out in Estancia, California. They made it to playoffs. They made it to state. They lost, but it was a really good experience with them too. And so just really giving the athletes some tools to help themselves as well with, performance, and performing under pressure. There's a lot of different things. I was listening in to some of what you guys were talking about, just different things that athletes deal with as well, and trying to help them out in that area, especially when it's crunch time, when it's time to perform, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, playoffs is a big one, huh?
Huge.
Yeah.
all the lights are on then.
Yeah,
man.
Exactly. And unfortunately, sometimes people do so well, and I've worked with even a ranked swimmer that was just awesome in practice and warm-ups and just killing it. And when it would come to competition, it would, he would have almost like freeze-up moments and essentially would pretty much throw up before every swim meet. And so we were able to meet and talk and really just get an idea of how he could improve just his expectations for himself and understand that, obviously he's an excellent swimmer, but he's got to just kind of swim, right? And they say sometimes like, hey, just play, just be in your natural flow, and you got to kind of just create your own space for yourself in that moment to feel comfortable. And after a couple of meetings and stuff, I mean, he stopped throwing up. And, when you throw up, you get super weak, you're drained, you're fatigued, and it kind of would set him back in the swim meet as well. And he was able to overcome that. And, kids thriving. So it's really cool. Just I'm one of the type of people, too, that I think it's not all one size fits all. It's unique to the individual and personalities. And that's one of the cool things about getting to work with people from different, whether it's age groups, sports communities, even just parents, individuals that are, trying to figure out, hey, how can I adjust in some of these types of situations, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you've been doing some really cool stuff out there. Been following your Instagram and your Spotify, and just reaching some of those kids. I thought that was a really cool opportunity to talk to them going into playoffs, and just to hear from a solid dude who understands the psychology, who cares, and can kind of just get them prepped, on an emotional level before going into some of that. I thought to myself, I said, what a blessing to get to just kind of hear some of the wisdom you could drop on them before they're headed into, for some of them, probably the biggest games of their life.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think, my setup is essentially, on Instagram, it's Worthwell. It's just one word, Worthwell. It'll pop up. And I also have a podcast that I have on Spotify called Well Talk. And we talk about different things. I was able to get Alan on there as well, and we had a good, awesome podcast episode where we talked about mental health, sports, and substance abuse all in the same episode. So being able to do that and having those meetings with those students and those student athletes. One of the guys actually was dealing with some stuff where he was really having some anxiety before the game, and he ended up being able to figure out some things that worked for him to help him calm down and get in the zone, essentially. And it was cool because you see, like Alan said, I mean, some of these people, it's their prime athlete career moment, and they go out there and give it their all, and it's just really cool to see when, they went up against some really top-ranked schools and made it to, in CIF, they made it to the semis, and then in state, they ended up playing a team that, I mean, the other team was just, their guys were ranked nationally, and but again, it's like going in those moments and understanding, hey, like, we're going out there to play, we're going out there to do what we love to do, because I know a lot of guys that play, they just love playing the game, right?
Right. Right. And while I have you here too, there's this concept that, just as I was listening to you, Matt, and you were kind of shedding some light on the anxiety that comes with performing at that level. And, I'm thinking, I've had clients come in and their first introduction to how to cope with their mental health was sports. And I'm curious while we have you, because Gabe and I were touching on that a little bit of just kind of how we got a question earlier from another gentleman who does a show, and he was asking about like how sports help, cope with tough times. And I'm curious if you could share some of your wisdom, just because you've worked with a lot of athletes on, just kind of seeing that for a lot of these young athletes, men and women, this is their first touch into the world of coping with their mental health, like anxiety and depression, which for those listening, it's coming for all of us. We're all going to experience it in our lifetime. But I'm curious if you could touch on that and share some wisdom, Matt.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the big factors is anytime somebody tells me that they're dealing with anxiety or depression on a clinical level, where it's really causing an impairment in their overall functioning, or they're starting to see a change in their disposition. First of all, I always, and I think most clinicians recommend, hey, let's do some activity, right? Some physical activity. Let's get some exercise going. Let's get something. And one of the things I get to do too is, since I do work with a lot of athletes, I say, you already play a sport. So let's focus in on how we utilize that to get you to manage some of that, either stress or, frustration. And even in the game, sometimes people take it personal, and they end up having the negative self-talk, and they're dealing with like, I can't do this. I won't do this. What if I fail? And so it's about challenging those thoughts. Some CBT principles, cognitive behavioral therapy, I feel like is really helpful with that as well. Reframing thoughts and saying, hey, sports is your go-to. That's awesome. Look at it like, this is my chance to let go, release all the tension, all of the stress, the negativity, and find my rhythm in the sport. And I think whether you're playing baseball, basketball, football, soccer, tennis, golf, any sport, there's a rhythm to it. And when people can find that rhythm and click in it, you start to get those feel-good moments. Even if you're not necessarily playing in the way you want to and performing in the way you want to, you're still understanding that, like, this is something I get to do to take care of myself. I'm being active as well. I'm being able to move around and really, it's a really cool and useful coping strategy. I mean, I even tell people that don't play sports, maybe try to pick something up as like a hobby or something that could be helpful, where you're getting active, you're moving around, you're occupying your mind with like, hey, I'm learning how to do this new thing. To me, that is what it's all about. It's really just thriving in the experience itself. And for those that might be struggling and saying like, hey, sports is my safe haven, I think that's awesome. And I think hold on to that, because that's one of your coping strategies.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you and I, Matt, we used to joke about this with like Andrew and a few of our other friends from our master's program, like how often a client will come in also and share that, like, how they cope is they just go to the gym, and that's great, right? Like you're saying, like sports are great, and hold on to these things. And I also hear the wisdom in what you're sharing in the sense of, for those listening, when Matt was talking about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is the practical coping strategies that you can implement outside of physical activity. Some of them are physical activity, but a big one, right? As you were sharing, Matt, it reminds me, I had a coach in college, and he would call it mental skills, and he would literally dim the lights and we'd lay down and do silent meditations. And, I was talking with Chance last week about that, of just like meditation is slept on, kind of gets shirked off as a joke, but in the world of athletics, it was really helpful. I can't tell you how many times I was a pitcher in my day in baseball and how many times I would have to check in with myself mentally and slow things down. Yeah. And because I did that in pressure moments, now in my life when difficult emotions come up, I stand a better chance.
Mm-hmm. Phil Jackson was actually really big on that too. Yeah. I was reading his book, and one of the things he implemented with the Lakers and the Bulls was that meditation and yoga and all of that mindfulness type of activity, which is, I mean, that probably played a role in both of those teams being so great. But I always found that fascinating because that was the first coach I really heard implement things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you're talking about Phil Jackson. And Matt, I seem to remember you're a big fan, aren't you?
Yeah, I was gonna say you took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna say Phil Jackson. They used to call him the Zen Master. You know, he was the guy that had his team do all the meditation and stuff before and after. And I'm a huge advocate as well for breathing. I think breathing is a huge component and part of all of that. That's why even when I said finding your rhythm, finding your breath as well and breathing the proper way, inhaling, exhaling. You see guys do it whether they're about to do something that's like, okay, here we go. Here's the big moment. I'm kicking the field goal or I'm shooting the free throw. You know, they inhale, they take a deep breath, they hold it, and then they let it out, right? And the principles that you use even in the game, you like Alan, what you said too, you use outside of it when you're experiencing pressures from home, family, pressures with work, school. You take those principles as well and you apply them in those areas. Yeah. And I think that's really helpful too because, like you said, going and being active is great. And I think for athletes to find that rhythm there is awesome. But you can also take those, that meditation, that guided imagery exercise where you're just focusing in on something that helps you kind of relax, slow things down. Alan, you hit that, I think, right on the nose. Slowing things down, right? Taking it at a pace that's like, okay, let me just kind of, all right, let's find that. All right, yep, here it is. And I'm slowing it down because right now, I mean, things are going so quick. We have so much that we have access to and instant gratification and all that stuff. And if we don't take time to slow down and be intentionally present, we miss out on a lot. And I think that's where a lot of the stress is coming from for other people as well. You know, we're just go, 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 go. And slow down, just take your time. And I think the breathing is huge as well, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I remember one time when I was in college, it was my senior year of college, and in baseball we call it getting lit up when you go out and you pitch and you everybody's hitting everything you throw. And I remember I had gotten lit up and I got pulled out, and it was a scrimmage, right? So coach pulls me off to the side and he says, slow down. All right. When you're up there, you control the pace, you control the tempo. You don't have the Los Angeles Dodgers behind you, but if the ball's in play, they'll make the play. And that's a huge, you know, Matt, when you were touching on it, and I want to hear from you, Gabe, as well on this, is like, we have so many opportunities to control the pace and the tempo in our life, right? If we would but slow down and take a look. And I think, Matt, what you were saying about the social media is like, people may think they're slowing down, but then they're scrolling 10,000 miles an hour on their phone, and it's the next video in the next 10 seconds, and it's not actually paced, right?
Right.
And, I want to hear from both of you. Gabe, what would you add to that?
I mean, I would just say social media is such a wild concept to me because we get a little sneak peek of everybody's lives, and we think that's kind of like how our lives are supposed to be. We set new standards based upon what we see on a daily basis and get into comparison and all of that. And so, to your point, I really don't think that it's slowing down anything.
Yeah.
That actually makes our mind move faster, even if we are laying down and scrolling. And to me, like, I'm very intentional about taking time away from it. Like I'll delete all the apps off my phone for a couple months just so I can get a break and just be present in reality. Like, sometimes people, the first thing that they want to do is open up their phone and go check Instagram or Twitter or whatever. So I think, to your point, slowing down needs to look like actually slowing down. Like maybe read a book instead.
Yeah.
Or just watch a show, like something that just takes your mind away from whatever's going on in your life.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Yeah. What do you think about that, Matt? I hear you agreeing on the other side. Can't see you, but I know you well, so I know you're agreeing.
Yeah, I feel like that's huge. And even as a clinician, you know, with a business as well, trying to promote the business via social media, it's tough finding that balance between saying, okay, how much is too much, and when do I have to slow down and say, like, hey, I need to take a break from posting content, or actually looking at different types of therapist pages, coach pages, things like that, and getting so caught up in that, and then being like, wait a minute, like, what happened? I just, you know, if you do, they call it doom scrolling.
Yeah.
When you just keep scrolling. And I think in a lot of ways, like, we often say, like, oh, time seems to be going by faster than it used to, and it's just not time is like gone faster. It's that we're so occupied with everything else now that we miss out. And when we come back to, like, oh, wait a minute, I just realized, I was scrolling for like 20 minutes. Then we're like, oh, time has gone by. We have TVs, we have laptops, iPads, watches, phones. We have phones that are designed for all kinds of cool things that you can do. But it's like Alan and I touched on it as well in my episode that we on my podcast, and like, they're controlling us to some degree, the devices, you know. And I think Gabe hit on something really huge too when he said, saying, like, I'm gonna deactivate or delete it for a while, and then say, like, let me just stay present with what I'm doing. And understand that if I miss out on certain things online, hey, I miss out, right? You know,
and that's the part,
it's not like, I think, and I feel like it's tough because the young people too, I mean, man, when we were growing up, MySpace was just starting to get big, you know, like, and we had one social media platform, and it was MySpace. I mean, these kids now, they've got Snapchat, TikTok, Be Real, Instagram. I mean, they don't even use Facebook anymore because they're like, that's for old people.
That's right.
And you just got, like, all of these platforms that in Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it now. And I think our brains are just, like, multitasking to a point where we're literally like, what the heck just happened, you know? And so limiting it, and like Gabe said, sometimes taking a step away and saying, I'm going to leave that alone for a little bit so I can give my brain a break, you know?
Yeah. And with that, like, I noticed that when I do take those breaks from social media, I don't miss anything.
No.
Like, I come back and everybody's in the same situation that was in when I got off. So you're not the world doesn't stop just because you're off of social media.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, and no one came up with a new meme since the last time you were on there.
You're going to find something else to laugh at when you get back. So, I mean, it's one of those things you got to be intentional about balancing your life. Like, I I didn't grow so I'm a little bit younger than y'all, but when I was coming up, it was a brand new Facebook.
Yeah.
It was brand new Facebook. MySpace was rocking. That's kind of like what we got on like when I was in middle school age. So like, but it was Facebook, and then early days of Twitter, and it wasn't the same type of pressure. It was fun. And it was kind of simple, to be totally honest with you. And now it's gotten to a level where I feel like it's our way of life in a lot of situations. Yeah. Like it's people, and it's not even just an age thing. I see it with grown adults now.
Oh, for sure.
Who in their 40s plus locked onto it. And it's just become a part of our daily routine. And sometimes you just got to break that cycle, no pun intended. Perfect plug. What both of you were talking about too, it reminds me of like in you may have both said it, but it answers Mark's question, I think, in a direct way. One concept when Mark asked how do you utilize sports to manage tough times, sports taught me the beauty of simplicity. Yeah.
All right. I remember when I was in college, we'd do these 2-hour workouts, and at the end of the workout, we'd do what's called finishers, and they could last up to 12 minutes, but you would do them in like 60-second increments, and those were the longest 60 seconds of my entire life. And now it's like 60 seconds goes by like that, but those moments I will never forget.
Oh my God.
The simplicity of slowing things down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The concept of time when you playing sports is very, very different than how it is on a daily basis. Like, I remember we used to do the same thing, and it'd be the longest 45 seconds. I'm like, yo, what are we doing right now? Like, I'm about to pass out. But it's those moments that kind of remind you that like time is as fast as you make it.
Right.
And so, it's very interesting to me how different time feels when you're playing the sport.
Well, and you see it like, I know schools are doing their best. I'm not here to bash anybody, but you see like physical education is decreasing. Recess time is decreasing, physical activity in general. And I'll tell you, it's like the first place you're going to see that be a problem is with young boys. Right, but you're also going to see it manifest later. Like, you're not going to catch it with the young girls right away because, Matt, you could probably talk to this too, and this is probably a part 2 of this conversation, but girls tend to be inattentive, right? So they go really internal, and boys tend to be hyperactive and they go really external. And so without that physical exercise, you're going to see that manifest over times, which is also why we have such an inundation of ADHD diagnoses that probably aren't that. Conversations for other times, but certainly what the three of us are talking about, if you guys are listening, is like one way truly to cope with your mental well-being is that mix that Matt was talking about. Is like the deep breathing, taking time, right, and being involved in something physical. So if you're listening and you're not into sports, I don't care if you're 85, 95, 105, there are things like pickleball, right, that's getting real popular. Just get out. If you got to roll around in a wheelchair. I've got a buddy who's in a wheelchair. He's paralyzed from the waist down, and he is one of the most active dudes. Right? He runs a foundation out in California called Be Perfect. Hal Hargrave, great guy, active, does sports all the time. So I would highly recommend it, just like these gentlemen have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it could be something as simple as just going for a walk every day. Like, I think physical activity is an automatic, like, it makes you have to put your mind in a different place. Because, I mean, you're trying to slow your breathing down. You're trying to keep, like, stay at a certain pace or whatever that may look like. And so, it makes you have to kind of, like, take your mind away from whatever's going on for a second, however you're feeling.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Matt, any last additions that you would add before we get you to plug your social medias again?
Just like, be intentionally present. I think that's one of the biggest parts in all of this is be intentionally present. Try to allow yourself to be in the moment, slow down, and you do that by slowing down. You do that by eliminating some of the things that maybe are causing you to feel like you have to multitask and multi-manage so much at once, take that time to really say, I'm going to be here. And when the thoughts come, whether it's negative self-talk, ruminations, fears, let them know, like, there's a time to deal with those things too. But right now I'm enjoying this moment, and try not to allow the stress of life take away so much time in your head. And I think just being able to invest in what is worthwhile, and that's really just living, right? Being in the moment. And we really, we've got people that are so fast-paced and doing so much. Sometimes we got to say, hey, this might be a coping mechanism for me to not feel.
Yeah.
So remember, it's okay to feel.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel, and especially fellas out there, it's okay to feel. We can talk about it. And I think this platform, Alan, you have right now is just awesome, too, to have. You think about it, you got 3 guys on here talking about feelings and life and just sharing different things. So, yeah.
Yeah. And Matt, I can't thank you enough for popping on, man. And, where can these listeners from all over the world reach you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so if you're looking to follow on social media, you can just put Worthwell on Instagram. It's one word, Worthwell, and it'll pop up. You'll see that there's some links there as well. Spotify has you can type Worthwell, or you can do Well Talk. That's Well Talk. It's 2 words there. Please feel free to like, subscribe, follow, comment, share. Appreciate it. There is also on YouTube as well. There's a Worthwell channel, and just a lot more coming. I'm excited for some new stuff coming up in the summer. Can't really announce it yet, but stay tuned. So, yeah, thanks again, Alan. I appreciate you having me on here. We have a friendship that's been going on for a long time now. So, yeah, appreciate it. And this guy is awesome. He knows what he's talking about. He's an expert. Just trust me. I know him very well. So, yeah, I respect Alan a lot. And Gabe, it's also been great to talk with you on here as well. So thanks a lot, Alan.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Thank you, Matt. I hope you have a blessed night, man.
You too. All right, I'll talk to y'all later.
Sounds good, man. We'll talk soon.
All right, bye.
Bye. All right, y'all. That was Matthew Fernandez out of Southern California. He's doing some real exciting stuff. Watch out for his stuff. I promise he's on the rise. He's getting himself out there in all kinds of ways, talking to a bunch of young athletes. He does a lot of ministry stuff as well. Just a phenomenal human, great father, husband, just a good dude, great therapist. And Gabe, what did you think about all that? That was a fun conversation.
Man, that was a lot of fun, and there's so much truth.
Yeah.
So much truth being told. I just, again, just to circle back, I appreciate the foundation that sports kind of laid for me.
Yeah.
I think as a man, it kind of creates that discipline. It creates that that desire, that passion. It also creates that feeling of like, I know how to work within a team setting. I know how to delegate. I know how to operate with different personalities, and I know how to escape my own feelings and be one with the team.
Yeah.
So sports holds so much value to me, and it always will.
Yeah.
And so I'm just appreciative of all of those moments.
Absolutely.
And so that's pretty much all that I could say.
Yeah, I think that's a powerful message to kind of tie a bow on at the end. Is I share with my clients this: past the point of your basic needs, food, water, shelter, the very next thing that you can start to check off the list is community. So if you're a parent listening to this, this was kind of geared towards you to kind of get your kids out in those communities. If they're already in them, double down on them, get involved with them. The parents are out there too involved. And if you're an adult listening, Matt called it out straight up. Get into some of those meditation, deep breathing practices that Gabe and I were commenting on with them, and find something physically active, right? But don't neglect your feelings, right? Go out, get in touch with your mind-body connection, All right, get in a flow state is what we call it in the realms of sports psychology. Get in a flow, where you're not thinking about the Instagrams and the social medias and the news and the horrible things happening. Get physical, all right? Do some breathing and relax.
Absolutely. Yeah. Amen.
Anything else you'd add tonight?
Just stay mindful. Stay mindful. Keep working. It's always going to be a journey. Anything that you're going through, regardless of what anybody else has to say, it's a journey that you and God have to deal with.
Yeah.
And so any way that you can escape whatever you're going through, any way that you can deal with it head on, take those challenges, because it's only going to make you a better person in the end. So
yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. What could be good, but what could be better, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. What was the one your coach did when you were a kid?
Yeah. So it was good, better, best. We never let it rest until our good is better and our better is best.
I love it.
Yep.
Few quick shout outs before we close this off tonight. Shout out to the what's Kim's podcast again? I've totally brain farted.
Fingerprints.
Fingerprints of Grief. Yeah, I was just on the show. Shout out to Kim with Fingerprints of Grief. It's on Fridays at 5 p.m. Shout out to Mark Henry, who does On the Mark 11 a.m. on Wednesdays. Shout out to Matt Fernandez for popping on. He's the Worth Well podcast. You can find him on all the platforms. Shout out to Jerry Maharo. I saw you in the comment sections. That's my brother and best friend for almost 20 years. And shout out to everybody else listening. We love you guys. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, breaking the cycle.
Yes, sir.
Podcasters and internet radio hosts, it's time to take your show to the next level. Hi, my name is Sammy.